If your personal finances are a complete mess, your business will be an extension of your personal finances. So you need to make sure you've got your just like personal finances under control before you start.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.
Hey everybody, it's Bref, and we're back with another episode of the Aesthetics Growth Podcast. Today I'm really excited to welcome a new guest. This is a real force within the world of medical aesthetics, and we're going to get to speak with Cassie Lane. Cassie is a nurse anesthetist turned aesthetics entrepreneur, the founder of Cassie Lane Aesthetics, as well as Injectables EDU, which is a fast-growing training platform for aesthetic injectors. Cassie has a strong clinical background and a foundation within Emory and VCU. As we'll find out, she blends the medical expertise with a passion for empowering others to thrive in aesthetics, which we got to catch up on a little bit before the show here today. Cassie, welcome to the Aesthetics Growth Podcast. Super excited to have you here.
Hi, Bref. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, let's just jump straight in. And I would love to hear, and I know my audience would as well, a little bit more about your background and the journey to where you arrived today.
Sure. Yeah. My background, I've been a nurse for a long time. Longish, since like 2007. And I've been a nurse anesthetist, where I put people to sleep for surgery and most importantly, pick them back up safely since 2012. I entered the aesthetic space only in 2020, actually. I took my first class right at the beginning of COVID. I had kind of already signed up for it and had been interested in it. And we talked a little bit about this before we hopped on. I kind of started a blog alongside my medical aesthetics practice. There was no information online that you could find how to get started if you were a nurse practitioner wanting to get started. And so I really saw a need in the internet space for that. It was a really interesting journey to really start right at COVID. All elective surgeries were canceled. So as an anesthetist, I actually had this weird free time on my hand during COVID, and I was at home with my kids. My husband was still working full time, didn't have childcare. So it was kind of weird to not be really in the throes for multiple weeks. I was probably at home for like at least a month or so while elective surgeries were closed. And that was the time that I had to really like jumpstart this business.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. It's almost like there was that happenstance, COVID happened and you started writing during that time, right?
Yeah. I had already signed up for my first Botox class with my first instructor, who's now my business partner in Injectables EDU, is Suzanne Jagger. She actually taught specifically to CRNAs. So I had signed up for that class already. COVID happened. I still went ahead and did my class. I just really had like this entrepreneurial bug in me, I guess. At that point, I had done some real estate stuff. I had done a short-term rental that we had just sold, and I was kind of looking for that creative outlet. I had gotten really into personal finance. So I just had all of this passion and excitement around doing something entrepreneurial. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted it to be. And then this kind of idea, one of my friends that I never would have expected, she's like, "Oh yeah, I get Botox." And I was like, "What?" Like, I just was totally thrown because I did not think that she would. I had some negative preconceptions about maybe doing Botox and didn't even know what fillers were really. But she looked so like good and natural. And then she pretty much was like, "Oh yeah, like, Val does it." And this sort of like everybody was getting Botox except for me. And I was like, what is the gatekeeping? And I immediately thought like, I bet with my background with procedures, like I might be good at this. And then when I took my first class, I got my first treatments and I looked in the mirror and I was like, I feel more positive about my appearance. Like I felt more confident. I was just like, wow, this is really, really special and cool. And I think I was lost from there.
I love it. So there's a lot of things coming together at the same time there, right? Because all of a sudden you kind of got introduced to the secret club. Everybody's in here. And then at the same time you started blogging, that got picked up. And what was that like, Cassie, as that maybe just from you start writing, okay, it's a passion, COVID is there. So you're kind of unleashing some of that, that inner desire, that entrepreneurship, as you mentioned, and that education really as you're writing. How did that come together? How did it start to pick up and build momentum from the blog towards where you are today with this Injectables EDU?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, like I said, I started doing the Injectables EDU blog at the same time that I started my business as a the tone I wanted to be was like, hey, I'm like your friend or older sister that maybe just like one step ahead of you. Like, here's my experience, like a vacation blogger. Like, hey, I went here, here's some tips. Because there was nothing like that to help people at the time. I didn't have aspirational goals at that time to train people. That actually came as more and more people, nurses, nurse practitioners were reaching out to me, reading what I was putting out there. And they're like, oh, well, do you train? And I was still pretty new. And anyway, so it took me a little bit to get some confidence to say, hey, yeah, I'll train other people. But I saw a huge need for not just clinical training, but for the business training. That's where we just know ground. And that's where I felt like there was something new and there was value to be added, because specifically speaking to advanced practice providers, nurses about, well, how can you own a business and make smart decisions? And like, what if you made money for yourself and did well for yourself and did well for your patients hand in hand? And you weren't just putting money into whether it's a hospital system or a physician or whatever it may be, like this idea of entrepreneurship, this nurse practitioner level, which hasn't historically really been very available to us.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, just within the space, obviously within aesthetics, there's been a kind of like a steady growth, maybe like a pop-up explosion in recent years, just due to people wanting to make that change and, the appeal of entrepreneurship. How was that for you with Injectables EDU? I want to kind of also tie into something that you mentioned there, which was people reaching out who weren't quite ready. When did you make that first step to say, yeah, I'm going to do it. Come on in, we're going to do some training?
Yeah, I started doing some trainings for Suzanne, who, like I mentioned, we ended up combining forces down the road. So her CRNA specific training company, I was doing some trainings for her. That's kind of how I got my learning from the best, as I would say. I always say she's taught me everything that I know. I wish she could be here today, but she was not free. But she pretty much taught me everything I know. And it instilled in me this importance of mentorship, because I had this really rapid, I know you guys help people grow their clinics, and the importance of having somebody that's been there, experienced it. So she helped me avoid all these really big common pitfalls and gave me the support, took me under her wing out of the kindness of her heart. And so I started training for her. And then after enough time, I said, she's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. I was like, you know what? As long as it's not stepping on your toes, I'd like to start doing some training on the East Coast. But I wanted to gear it more towards NPs rather than CRNAs. It's funny how things work out. I was in a lot of ways just to not step on her toes, and I didn't want to hit that same market as her. But then it ended up being, such a great field. Working with nurses and nurse practitioners has really been the way that we grow. We still serve CRNAs as well, but there's a much wider market, more traditional like NPs and RNs getting into this than per se CRNAs.
Right. I love what you said there. We were at an event last weekend or a couple of weekends ago. We actually hosted one where we were talking about the different mindset and the benefits of collaboration versus competition. Now, in your case, it was out of respect for your mentor and kind of being nice as far as, well, I don't want to potentially cause any negative ripples here. But in the end, you saw that the combined forces was actually going to positively impact the marketplace at greater levels, right?
And it's funny how karma, works out, right? Like she invested, like I said, out of the kindness of her heart in me, in putting that goodwill into the world. And then it does come back to you. I see that in all the mentoring I've done from other practices. Like I get more from the people I mentor than I give out. It is just that golden rule. And we're seeing a change, and we're trying to be one piece of that change of stopping this narrative of like nurses eat your young and don't talk to anybody. They're going to steal your patients. Like there is enough patients. All the faces need Botox. Trust me. And my success is not predicated on anybody else's failure, but that's been this very pervasive mentality. And because I was so lucky to experience the opposite of that, it made me want to spread that even more. And we're starting to see, I call it the next generation of injectors. I think realizing that the nurse practitioner up the street is their biggest ally, and that the things that threaten us as boutique med spa owners, solopreneurs, small businesses, is not the other business owners, the other women trying to feed themselves and families and do good by their patients. It's things, pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, private equity, right? Like, but we're so busy. This happens all the time in medicine, right? Like, we're so busy getting at each other. Nobody's looking at the real problem over there. So trying to bring some light to that we have some power in numbers, things like we've created purchasing groups through our training company. So that's a way that we can be in a space with these big private equity groups that get this huge discount because we have a really big voice as this whole community, right?
I love that. I love that. And, when it comes to kind of that, there's almost been, you mentioned there kind of that, there's a mindset shift in it, right? It comes through probably educating your members. What is it like from what you've experienced with that initial, someone's coming in, they've reached out, like where do you find that your students, like where they are from a business standpoint, a mindset standpoint before they come to you, and kind of what that transformation is like? Because I love what you said also about you get so much back from them, almost more than they get from you, or it's reciprocal, right? And I'm sure that's part of the transformative journey that they're experiencing, and you are as well, from helping and guiding them and helping them to get better.
Yeah, I do a lot of free mentoring consulting calls. Anybody can make a call with me through injectablesedu.com. And it's so cool because I'm talking to people from all over the country who are either trying to get into this or they're in it. Maybe they're new or they're facing something that they said, hey, maybe this lady I saw on a podcast, maybe she could help me, right? Talking to these people, most of the time, oftentimes I'm meeting people when they're considering taking their first class. They're aware that we have courses. They want to talk to a real person and understand, is this the right fit for me? They've got common concerns. It's hard to find clarification on being compliant. They're worried that the market's oversaturated. They're oftentimes, they're hopeful, and that you said, like, what's their mindset? Like, I think they're very hopeful, but they're also scared, and there's a lack of good information out there. So oftentimes they've seen like our free blog posts that were written by me, like before AI wrote everything. They were written, by me pretty much during COVID, a lot of them, about these real, like, transparent, practical, how to get into this field. So I think that they're excited and oftentimes very burned out or been, medicine's changed a lot in the last, even since I've been in it. So they're looking for, I think just like I was, something to explore this real passion or excitement or a happy area of medicine too, right? We're doing something really great in a wellness sphere, which most of us have been beaten down by being with our patients on the worst day of their life for like years on end. Gets pretty exhausting, and it's wonderful work to do that. But this is wonderful work and can be the next phase for some people.
Awesome. That's fantastic. When it comes to, you mentioned the kind of the positive aspect of it, and I get the sense that as you're working together, students are going through the Injectables EDU with you, that there's growth, there's transformation, they're learning. And in an industry that's rapidly developing as well, it's kind of like the education that you're going through and they're going through is resulting in like better outcomes through the treatments that your team and your students are providing to patients in the marketplace. I'd love to, if you don't mind sharing, just a little, if it's okay, what does it look like on the inside, or when somebody signs up for Injectables EDU?
Yeah, so I love it when people find us when they're considering their first class. They'll come train with us. We've got multiple locations. I'm located in Richmond, Virginia. Suzanne's located in Portland, Oregon. We also have trainers with their own. All of our trainings are held at somebody's med spa. So you're training in their med spa. You're seeing behind the scenes. This is the chair they have. It's really cool and aspirational. Many classes are held in like a hotel room or something like that. So we love that you kind of get this hands-on in somebody's actual clinic that's teaching you. We've got a location in Chicago, Atlanta, Orlando. We do an annual summit. So we get you to come. You take your whole class online. Botox and or fillers. You can do either or together. And then you come after you've completed the online portion, you do full day of injecting. The whole day Saturday is Botox, the whole day Sunday is filler. And you're actually injecting real people and getting those first injections under your belt And our expectation is once you leave our class, that you're comfortable to do a full upper face of Botox, or you're prepared to, right? We're never comfortable the first time. I get that question all the time. How long did it take you to be comfortable to do XYZ? So comfortable is very subjective, but the first time we started an IV on somebody, like I was terrified. You practice on your fellow nursing student or like a fake arm, but at a certain time you've got the skill and you've got to go practice it on a real person. And then one other great thing, we have so much ongoing support. Like you can make those mentoring calls with us as needed. We're just all about, we don't drop people like a hot potato after they train. There's always access to get with us to overcome these little common roadblocks that you hit, that you just need somebody that's been there to shed a little light.
Sure. I mean, it's always, you spoke about mentors earlier, and that's been a real common theme on the show here actually is, I don't know really any or many that I can think of, certainly, quote unquote, successful people or even, coaches, mentors that I've worked with that don't use a mentor as well, because it's all about staying sharp. It's all about learning, continuing education, and generally learning from someone who's either been there and done it or has some value to add. Now, when it comes to, you mentioned obviously the emphasis and the focus on Botox and fillers. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in that space?
Again, I would say trends, let's say with Botox, one thing that I'm really embracing, and I'm seeing more and more of it, but it's just like regularly doing full face Botox treatments. Botox is becoming way more mainstream and much more accepted, which is really cool. Like there's a lot less stigma around it. It's becoming more like dyeing your hair. So that's cool. But, and also we have one whole face. If we're only anti-aging from here up, like we're ingesting other people's faces as a whole. You want to relax like some of this animation on the lower half as well. People come to see me from under 50 years, they're coming from here up. People who are over 50 years old, they're coming from here down. So we want to prevent some of the jowling and the heaviness. And that preventative lower face Botox just makes a huge difference. And once you get the eye for it, you'll see it everywhere. People who are just kind of got this nice relaxed pause on aging from here up. And then we're just like Wild West from here down. On the flip side, I feel like with fillers, as Botox is becoming more mainstream, it's like, well, we had to villainize something. So now like fillers is getting kind of villainized. Everybody, the Real Housewives, all these people who are having huge amounts of plastic surgery, insane amount of fillers. Now that's getting like placed on dermal fillers. Like it's almost like we had to sacrifice dermal fillers and make them the bad guy to allow for women to want to feel better and do Botox. Like we couldn't let... In too much fillers, we're really going away from that, which is a good thing that's come out of this transition. And we're seeing much more, the trend I think is biostimulation, just like leading more into natural things like Sculptra, Hybridilla radius, really doing like PRP and PRF type procedures. You're seeing all this like, salmon's fur. I mean, and just like any good thing, any good thing always gets overdone, just like fillers did, right? And then we're going to overdo it with the biostim stuff. And then there's going to be some sort of like FDA pullback or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like there's always different trends, right? Like so that's what we say, and there's different fashions, and it's also think that just that evolution of the technology, what you can do with it, and it's about people like yourself as well that are they're pushing the envelope or kind of testing different things to really get those best outcomes for what patients want. And that's the interesting part of it too, right? Because what a patient or the marketplace kind of wants today was different than what it was 10 years ago. And guess what? It's probably going to be different again in another 10 years.
We're getting more evidence-based. That's a really great trend that's happening. You've got so many more providers, that are in the aesthetic space. And most of us have this really traditional background. So when I was doing anesthesia, of course, I'd be like, well, show me the evidence-based framework for why we're infusing this or whatever. So we're starting to put that microscope and that mentality into aesthetics, which is much needed because it's a highly unregulated field. There's a reason patients have so much. When you were talking about like bringing up the whole industry, that was what I was thinking is there's a kind of a little bit of a distrust of our industry because there are a number of bad actors. There's low amount of like regulation oftentimes in the space. You see it on the news. So I am seeing it just being taken more seriously as like a medical medical specialty, which is much needed. And practitioners are starting to say, well, I need this to be more evidence-based versus kind of like a voodoo or like an N of one study.
Yep. Yep. No, 100%. And, we spoke about it a little bit earlier too, which is some of the fears in the industry, or the competition really isn't so much against the colleagues down the street, but against some of those whether it's the pharma, some of the equipment companies. And on that piece there with the equipment and the devices, there's kind of like a lot of pressure, right, coming on everybody in the marketplace with massive sales teams out there. What's that like? What are you hearing from your students when it comes to that? Because the collaboration together and some of the things you're doing at Injectables EDU really help to kind of to insulate against that and to provide a safe place to have a kind of a forum really to understand what is the best and what's working.
Yeah, I love that point. And I'm sure you guys see this all the time. The number one killer of a small med spa, solopreneur, whatever you want to call it, is going to be buying an expensive device. That is the one thing that will sink and ruin your practice, that you will not come back from making a bad $250,000, $200,000 purchase. So 90% of what I'm doing with my students is talking them off the ledge of like buying something. And the reps, you have to remember, everybody's got a job to do. Reps are people too, right? And yep. Their job is to put food on their family's plate, and they believe in these devices, and their job is to sell them to you. They're not responsible for your personal success. And oftentimes they might be the only person that is in your ear. You're feeling very isolated as a business owner. Nobody will talk to you in your city. God forbid you steal their patients, right? And this is why it's so important to have that community, because, when I'm thinking about buying a device, I pick up the phone and I talk to Suzanne or one of my other support. So I have so much support in this field. I talk to them 90% of the time. They're talking me off the ledge of making that device choice. You can have a very successful practice with 0 devices. It's always like, let's say it twice. You can have a very successful practice with 0 devices. And so unless you have, my rule of thumb is, unless you have hundreds and realistically probably over 1,000 patients in your practice, you should not be considering a big device purchase. And to me, a big device purchase, let's say over $50,000.
I definitely think that's one worth kind of like, pausing if you're listening and rewinding, because it's a common pitfall. We hear about it a lot ourselves. And some great points, Cassie, just want to almost like affirm and reiterate, is that there's big companies with big budgets, big R&D, but also sometimes bigger marketing budgets. There's products to sell. They've got families to feed. The sales reps are there. And then it comes down to, sales in local marketplaces. And at the end of the day, like you said, you don't need that to grow your business to a level where it can make sense to look at a good option to add more services. But I think that's just worth saying again, you do not need those big ticket items to grow your business, right? Could you maybe expand on that just a little bit from what you've seen from experience and what you're seeing in the marketplace, with maybe some examples of, and I'm sure there's horror stories, but just, some of your students perhaps that are doing it. They're getting to, good levels of revenue and business growth without, putting that pressure on themselves by making a large capital equipment investment.
Yeah, I feel like every time I've bought a device, I like live in regret for a while, even if it ends up being a great purchase. But it also feels like for maybe every one great device choice you make, you're probably going to make one that's not that great. And devices are great. It's just that when in doubt, just say no. And before you purchase something like that, like, please pick up the phone and make a call with me, because you can. And I have certainly people inside of, we have a formal mentorship program as well. And people in our community, I've helped coach them to make very successful device purchases. But it's always about knowing your numbers. And if you're sitting there and you don't understand your own KPIs, you don't understand how much money's, as simple as this, how much money's going out, how much money's coming in, how much profit are you making? If I had to guess, more medical spas than not don't truly have a good understanding of that. And everything is a math problem. a good back of the napkin that we always say is a device should be 5xing your investment per month. So say you're leasing something for $1,000 a month, then it should be rev-genning you $5,000 per month. So you have it, on a loan for 10 years. Well, what's your monthly payment on that loan? It should be 5xing it. Say you just bought it in cash. You set a goal for yourself of, I'm going to pretend like I paid this with a loan. And if I would have put it over 5 or 10 years, how much do I need to rev-gen with this device? Once I take out any consumables on it, please look at the consumable cost. And I know to you, Bref, I'm just like preaching to the choir. This is just
I love it. I love the math talk. Yeah, but this is great value for our listeners. Please keep going.
If I could megaphone this, but it's just if you can 5x that after consumables, and then say, okay, in order to make $5,000 a month, how many patients do I actually have to treat? And then you say, okay, well, I've got 100 patients and I need to treat 100 patients per month. Like that math doesn't map. So ultimately, so much of this, like you never know the future. Nobody could have ever predicted COVID. Like we have no idea what's going to happen with all these tariffs. Like we're all just like, what is happening? Even in 5 years, I feel like I've been through like 7 recessions.
It's a new world every other year.
Yes. And so you've got to, nobody would have known to prepare for COVID, but now we do. And that's where like memberships are really key. I have my memberships that are like a 1-year commitment. Then I know I can pay my rent and my employees if for some reason we've had 2 practices in Richmond get burned down by fires, 2 medical spas just literally like razed from fires. You've got to think in a conservative, it's being an entrepreneur is this weird mixture of being like an idiot who's a risk taker, but also being like having a plan B for if something is, I guess, fortifying your business within reason for some of these things.
For sure. I love what you said there because, most of our audience, especially on the, you're getting started side, we're business owners, we're entrepreneurs, we're visionaries. And what I've got from the conversation today is that, that's great, right? We need entrepreneurs in the world, and it's exciting and it's important to start businesses to relay your impact in the world. It's also really important to have, while we're there making the impulse decisions, because sounds great, let's do it, to have the logical side or that accountability partner, someone that you can have that conversation with instead of saying, I'll buy it now, here's the check. You know what? I'm going to talk to some people and I'll get back to you, right? And that's where you come in as well in the Injectables EDU, because that's a forum where it sounds like that most of your members have probably had those conversations and might actually have some good feedback for someone that's considering making a big decision.
And if you're paying full price for any like device, you're getting taken. Like this is a negotiation, like a used car. I usually say, if you can get a device for 60% of what retail is, then you're probably you're starting to get to like maybe the best deal that they're willing to do. But I wouldn't have thought that as a nurse that like, guess what? Like negotiating is super awkward, like, especially as women, really anybody, but I think as women, we feel uncomfortable saying, hey, Bref, like, I don't know, that's a lot. Can I pay less? You just gotta. So when somebody tells you, hey, don't pay full price, it's like wool is taken off of your eyes. And these reps, they've told me like, I actually kind of feel bad when I sell this M Skull for $250,000 because, they know that they've seen it enough that it just is not going to produce to make sense.
I've got to ask you, it was on my mind as soon as you said negotiations. Have you read Never Split the Difference, or do you have any particular, favorite, books or learnings when it comes to the negotiating? Because that's a big part of what you're doing as well, right?
Yeah, I haven't. I might have listened. I feel like I am constantly listening to business books on Audible, and I have 0 business background. 0. I have learned everything by reading like business books, and I'm certainly no whiz kid when it comes to business, but like I didn't know how to use Excel when I started this business. So where I've come from has been this like mixture of this strong mentorship, but also just self-learning. And like, I am always like, I will be listening to every other podcast that you put out because I just love, I've learned so much from just listening to like every business book under the sun, not just in the aesthetics, but like all around. I just listened to or read. I'll also like listen to something, and then if I like it, I'll order the hard copy book to then really read it. But I kind of like see if it's worth my time by listening to it. while I'm doing laundry or dishes or whatever it may be, driving. I just read Traction, which I don't know if you're a Traction person.
I'm looking at it. It's right over there. Indeed.
And it's like life-changing. And I love when you're talking about entrepreneurship, the opening thing. I'm going to totally butcher how he says it, but at being at Traction, he's like, what if your pilot came on and said like, well, we don't know where we're going and what the wind speed is, and we don't know how fast we're like all these fun, right? Your pilot
parachutes, where's
like
the parachutes? Yeah.
Like we have no plan ultimately. And then they go, but we're making great time. And they're like, that's what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And I really resonated with that. And that's what you need at the very beginning is like unlimited optimism and like bootstrapping and grit, right? But there comes a time where that no longer is gonna be enough. And I love coaching. We get people from that 0 point where they've got the grit and all that to that first place. And then we also love taking people from there and helping them hire and helping them, make these more advanced decisions. So it's like this whole that we love going along with people on.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hiring obviously one of the biggest challenges in the industry and in a lot of industries. Cassie, would you mind expanding a little bit on just that? Because you kind of mentioned from the 0 to to the stage where they're hiring. What's that typically looking like? That's just a really, I think interesting and probably valuable area to zone in on a little bit for our audience.
Yeah, we are big proponents of doing this, maybe like smart or in a conservative way, because nurses and nurse practitioners have such great primary earning power and such high demand in your field. So I always told myself, I'm not going to risk my kids' college fund in doing this. So a lot of people, what the average person, and we do have people who come in with, maybe an investor and they're going to buy a space, they're going to do a build up. But our average person is that nurse or nurse practitioner. They start doing it on the side. So like me, I worked 4 10-hour shifts. And then I would see patients on my off day, and then I'd see them some evenings and on the weekends, right? So I didn't even give up my full-time job until I'd already been doing aesthetics for a year. And that's kind of the model that we teach is like build your own personal patient list. You're going to really, kind of really working 2 full-time jobs until you've got some proof in the pudding. And then you start to drop time. If you have the flexibility in your job to drop a day or 2, or that you say, okay, once you understand your numbers, you say, I've got this much runway for my business and I'm going to really dedicate everything for 6 months or whatever your runway is and have a goal of, I'm going to make this much. It's kind of like at a certain point, you do have to start to throw everything at it. But we recommend starting in a safe way where you're just like renting a room, right? Don't get a van. This is if you read my blog, that's like, the top 10 injector mistakes. This was me. My husband actually worked at CarMax and I was like, find me a Sprinter van and we're going to renovate it. And, and everybody thinks that way. And pointing out that also so did I. But a lot of the first time we talk to people and in our basic courses, we're like, hey, I thought this, and this is why that's like actually not that practical. It's way cheaper to rent a space than it is to convert a Sprinter van, which is not like there's a lack of rooms or like it just, and you know what? It took me years to understand why was I thinking that and why is everybody else thinking I'll just like get a van. And it's because the second you sign that lease, the second that this is real and out there, then you can fail. And so this feels like it's not even rational, but it feels like more of like dipping your toe in it. But it's like you won't. I was just telling this to my son who had soccer tryouts last night. So you can't succeed if you're not willing to put yourself out there and fail. And like that's really scary.
Like that. I mean, what you were talking about there, I know it's not quite, but it's like you kind of burn the boats, but you've got to make a commitment. I think that's really what it is. And when you're getting that room, number one, you're getting the lease, you're in it for the year or for the duration of a couple of years, perhaps. But there's also, I think, a nice benefit to that too, Cassie, right? Which is, depending where that room is, and hopefully it's in a good space, there's an opportunity to collaborate too with a lot of people in that building.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you see, is there a kind of a formula for that where you see a lot of your students that they get the room and then there's maybe referral opportunities from different businesses in the building? Anything like that you've noticed?
Yeah. I mean, some of these, you're going to pay a premium when you go to these shared working spaces, like a solo salon type of deal. But those can be good. And I've seen a number of people have success in those because there is kind of a nice referral network oftentimes. Or it's great if you say, where is my ideal client going? And even if it's a nail salon or a massage place or a facial place that doesn't offer Botox, if you can rent a room somewhere that your kind of ideal client is at in the realm of the location you want to be, because your patients don't want to then have you move 20 minutes away. You kind of want to be thoughtful about, where do I want to, everything from day one, we're trying to teach people to think in the long term. Where are you trying to get? And then we back that up to how do we get there? And what does success mean to you? Success can be working full time, doing, at the doctor's office and having Botox parties for your friends a couple times a month, and you get your Botox for free. Success can be that you have a solo practice where you rent a room and you do it full time, or it can be, something in the middle, or you can have $3 million med spas. Like all of those things are success. But if you don't know where you're trying to head, you don't know where you're going to land. And I've had to almost pull myself back at times and be like, big reason I did this was because I wanted to have the flexibility and the time with my family. And your business is not your baby. Your business, I personally say, is an anaconda that will take everything that you feed it. And so it's balanced.
That conjures an image.
Yeah, you've got to. There are times that you have to shine your light and give everything to your business. But if your goal is to be that present parent, if you don't watch out, you might wake up and find that success is $3 million med spas. But you didn't have that time with your family. So just always be driving to that goal, and success can look like a lot of different things.
So important. And, your plan might be different from somebody else's plan. Kind of goes back to traction as well, right? Which is, you've got to create that plan. You've got to have that mission, that vision, and instill your values, really have that foundation. And I think that can really catch a lot of people up, especially in a world where there's social media, there's kind of comparison games, and someone's doing this, and, all those things that can kind of drag people in different directions. And one really important thing I think you mentioned, Cassie, as well, was just having that plan, right? Now, do you help your students to do that, to put together initial plans and to work through plans? Is that part of the process also?
Even as early as the first time you call me and you're thinking about taking a class with us, it's kind of like, hey, what are you trying to achieve and how can I help you? And then we also just really get in the nitty gritty, more so in our formal mentorship program, of like, hey, I would like to step away from the hospital completely, but am I ready? And that's when we get together with let's run these numbers. If your personal finances are a complete mess, you've got to get your business will be an extension of your personal finances. So you need to make sure you've got your just like basic personal finances under control before you start. This only takes about, really, we do a whole breakdown on Injectables EDU of what you're going to spend to get started. But, as little as like $10,000 to $20,000 to just get started in this. And I joke, I'm like, I think it probably costs that much to like invest in being like a Stella and Dot or like a Mary Kay consultant.
Right.
You want to come into this from like a place of power and knowing your finances is a much more enjoyable way to do this.
For sure. Well, a lot of gold, a lot of really good advice there as well, and definitely food for thought for a lot of our listeners. Cassie, if you're up for this, would love to maneuver you through our rapid fire round with some fun questions. All right, cool. I'm actually going to start off with a pretty easy one because you've been doing it for the whole show. But for someone who's listening, what would be the best piece of advice that you could give them?
Ooh. Take your first class. You're not committing for life. Just, you won't go to your grave wondering, what if I did this? What if I tried it?
All right. Okay, cool. All right. How about this? At the end of a crazy week, and we all had them, or a crazy day, what's your favorite way to unwind?
This is so lame, but I really love to watch TV. Just really love TV.
Also, okay, follow on favorite show currently?
Oh gosh, I had watched Yellowstone, and I just watched 1923, but it was like way too violent and I had to fast forward through like half of it. But that's just what I most recently watched. And now I'm about to get back into like the last season of You. That one's on Netflix.
All right. Excellent. We've got some kids in the house, and we did Star Wars through COVID, so we're watching a little bit of Andor right now ourselves.
We're huge Harry Potter people, like huge.
it's funny, we actually just finished up Harry Potter like 79, it seemed like, because they were going on in part 1 and part 2s, but that was definitely a favorite around our place too. How about when it comes to the best advice that you've ever received?
Begin with the end in mind.
I love that. It comes back down to the planning, but also, having the vision for where you want to be. And I think in a world that moves so fast, we really have to spend that time to put those thoughts onto paper and put those plans together. Cassie, is there any last piece of advice or parting words you have for anybody who's listening? We really covered so much today from you starting the business, Injectors EDU, some of the pitfalls that businesses fall into within the medical aesthetic space, right down to your favorite TV show. Is there anything in between that we missed, or any other messages that you'd like to relay?
No, I'd just like to invite people. I'd love to connect with you. Check us out. There's tons of free info at injectablesedu.com. Come connect with us at our annual conference. Come check out a class with us. But we're really here to help, and we just love connecting with other people in the space. And I just want to say thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. I was going to say, so it's injectablesedu.com. Make sure you check it out, everybody. And when is your next event coming up, or how many events do you typically do every year?
We have intro classes like every month. It's not always in the same. About every other month, we have a class in each one of those locations I mentioned. So okay. You'll see the whole schedule on there. We only do our conference once a year. That's in April. We just had it for this year. Awesome. Well, hey, it was an absolute brilliant experience getting to hang out with you today, and I'm sure our audience are going to love it. So Cassie, thanks a million for being our guest. Thank you so much.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.